had a decent Monday. This has been somewhat of a decent day. My sleeping is erratic, and so it's been difficult to sleep and trying to focus during the course of the day. But nevertheless, I'm still here, and we're still doing news. One of the interesting stories that popped up, this is kind of, it's news, it's lefty news, it's specifically lefty news, even though it's unfortunate lefty news. It started off on a good point. Jeremy Corbyn has a conversation with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez over the phone. Where is it? Which one? Is it this one? No, it's not this one. All right, whatever. She has a conversation with Jeremy Corbyn on the phone. And it was this pleasant tweet that came after the conversation on the phone. In fact, Jeremy Corbyn, I think, started it with this. Great to speak to AOC on the phone this evening and hear her firsthand how she's challenging the status quo. Let's build a movement across borders to take on billionaires, polluters, and migrant baiters and support the happier, freer, and cleaner planet. Jeremy Corbyn likes to say a better world is possible, making the point that this is not an act of God. This is an act of choice, even if the choice is implicit. It is an act of choice. It's not God. It's not, when they're cutting taxes for billionaires, meaning this estate tax, it's not an act of God that's doing it. Those are elected members who are going into pursue a very specific objective that represents a very sliver of the electorate, the sliver that puts money in their pockets. So this is not, I guess my point in this is a better world is possible. That better world is possible is dependent upon, to some degree, on us. Not us as individuals, but us as a collective. So Corbyn is right. Now, we're in a political space, which means you have to make the argument. You have to win that argument. And sometimes you can't necessarily win that argument if people can't necessarily point to the things that you're actually doing. Meaning, if you get into power and you don't fulfill the objectives that you're trying to fulfill, and the public doesn't believe you're going to fulfill those objectives, there is a case to be made from the right, and when they are dissatisfied with the left, the case for the right gets louder. Jeremy Corbyn is making the point a better world is possible. We can go in that direction. Now, this is good. Now, Ocasio-Cortez doesn't talk in this way. Jeremy Corbyn is open socialist. He's very clear about it. I've heard him argue in Oxford socialism. This thing of socialism can provide for our needs and so forth, and him going back and forth with some of the other members of the opposition on this, these kind of libertarians and these conservatives, Tories. So Ocasio-Cortez comes out and answers Jeremy Corbyn. It was an honor to share such a lovely and wide-reaching conversation with you, Jeremy Corbyn. Also honored to share the great hope of peace, prosperity, and justice that everyday people can create when we uplift one another across class, race, identity, both at home and abroad. It's cutesy, it's nice. Fair enough. I mean, I assume I know what that means, but I don't fully know what that means in a policy sense. But judging by some of the stuff she's saying, let's just say this stays in line with Ocasio-Cortez, meaning the workable point of view. Fair enough. Then she starts getting hate for her conversation with Jeremy Corbyn. People calling saying, hey, didn't you know that guy was anti-Semite? Hey, did you know that guy was a raging Jew hater? Did you know that Jeremy Corbyn was a Nazi? All of these people in her chat saying these things. Now, Ocasio-Cortez, I don't necessarily know how closely she follows British politics, but a smear campaign has been put on Jeremy Corbyn. Just because you support Palestinian rights and you acknowledge that what is taking place from the standpoint of Israel is an occupation of somebody else's land, that does not in fact make you an anti-Semite. It makes you just conscious of reality. That's a very big difference in those two things. Jeremy Corbyn, you will be hard-pressed to find any legitimate signs that Jeremy Corbyn is an anti-Semite. That hasn't necessarily stopped people from smearing him with this because of his support for Palestinians. That shows you how in the bag for the Israeli government that the British media electorate, or the media elites and political elites and the United States are. You don't believe me? I mean, I guess I say this. I don't think I have to make that point in the very least to the audience. I would think you would pretty accept that. I mean, the perspective of Israel, for the most part, is the order of the day. I mean, for fuck's sake, they're trying to pass a bill to criminalize anti-BDS movement, meaning a peaceful resistance against an occupation. You know, something similar to the perspective of South Africa, what took place in South Africa, meaning they were trying to stop the apartheid state. So take a look at her Twitter feed. Look at this. Elad Neori, I'm a huge fan of yours. I hope you take a look at the amount of Jews trying to call attention to Jeremy Corbyn's long documented history of anti-Semitism. The documented history that doesn't exist. He's not anti-Semite. I hate these type of smears. And the reason I hate these smears, there's something... Look, if you and I are having a conversation, and I don't like something that you said, and I just start screaming that you're a racist, doesn't really matter if what you said was racist or not. It's kind of gross to have that label put on you and for you to say this is kind of the beat your wife argument. How long have you beaten your wife? What do you mean how long have I beaten my wife? You're having a conversation about beating your wife. Same thing. It's the smearing. The smearing doesn't necessarily have to have legitimacy, only the smearing. And when it resonates and people just say it over and over and over and over and over again, it takes on a life of its own. There's some people who credibly are useful idiots who take this up. But it is important to know the difference between people who are not and people who are just throwing this stuff out there purely in bad faith in order to attack political opposition. It saddens me that Ocasio-Cortez fell for this and didn't necessarily know that this was taking place in the UK. Take a look at this. Ocasio-Cortez's response to this: the left's blind spot in this regard can still be fixed, but we need leaders like yourself to listen. Essentially, to listen and be against Jeremy Corbyn because he's a raging anti-Semite, even though there's nothing to show he's a raging anti-Semite. It's nonsense. Support of Palestinian causes is not, by definition, anti-Semitic. Just a point. She responds to this and says, hey, thank you for bringing this to me. We cannot and will not move forward without deep fellowship with the leadership of the Jewish community. I'll have my team reach out. Reach out to what? The smears. It's nonsense. It's just like the people who are calling members who've gotten in with you. The one is a Palestinian, and I forget the other woman's name, who's a Muslim. But people calling them racist and anti-Semitic and all this other nonsense just by virtue of who they are. Meaning, I could be strong on this thing that, yes, Israel is occupying that territory, while simultaneously be against anti-Semitism. I think I do that across the board. I tend to be against being racist, so sexist, bigoted, etc., 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 homophobic, the works. But these smears, like when Hillary Clinton was running and she was like, Bernie Sanders being in the race was him being, against women. This stuff is nonsense. It's like you're sexist because you're running against Hillary Clinton. What do you mean? Just by me being in the race? Yes, she's a woman. Get out the race. She's a woman. This is utter nonsense. This person is Jewish. So by definition, if you're against... Nonsense. These were smears. These smears was done so in order to try to take Jeremy Corbyn down. They couldn't get him in a political space, so they tried to do this nonsense. There were Blairites that allowed this to resonate, and they ran with it. Media has been somewhat against Corbyn, just in general, and they were looking for anything to latch onto. The fact of the matter is, though, there is no there in this. There's no there in this. Just saying. But nevertheless, Ocasio gave it credence. I found this from, and just so we're clear, it's a lot of these. It's not just one. It was a concerted effort. Look at this. FYI, 85% of British Jews think Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic. Well, if you run with a story, I mean, you have a large part of the American population that thinks Russians hacked into the elections. Ask them what hack means, and you get into this kind of quizzical face. Put this another way. Imagine 85% of Muslim polled that they thought a particular European leader was Islamophobic. Would you take the leader's phone call and laud it as a step toward greater justice and equality? If not, please grant Jews the same consideration. Again, it's not about what Jews think. It's about reality. There's a difference in those things. I'm sorry you guys are useful idiots in this way, but fact of the matter is you have nothing on this other than the media recounting I can't think of the woman's name, but screaming like a raving lunatic, calling him a fucking anti-Semite. This stuff was nonsense. Here's another one. Dear Miss Ocasio-Cortez, Jeremy Corbyn is anti-Semitic. Okay. This is Haaretz, a Jewish publication. I know you did this with the best of intentions, and it's normal for Congress people to engage with like-minded leaders abroad, but you should know that Jeremy Corbyn is incredibly problematic. He is not incredibly problematic. He is pro-Brexit and very problematic for British Jews. Yes, he's pro-Brexit because the population voted to leave. Are you shitting me? He's pro-Brexit. That's a hit? That's not a hit. Both parties are pro-Brexit because you have a crisis of democracy if they are not. If you call a referendum, and in the referendum the public says, yes, we want to leave, and then the elected leaders decides to blow that off, that's somewhat problematic to this whole thing of democracy. Again, a nonsense attack point. As a British citizen and progressive, it saddens me that you consider it a mark of honor to associate with pro-Brexit politicians who use xenophobic language. Jesus Christ, can't say it. Who used xenophobic language to exploit England's anti-immigrant sentiment and who supported Russia's murderous intervention in Syria. This guy's a fucking idiot. Who is this? Idris Ahmad, or whatever his name is. That's nonsense. Real border security to stop drug traffickers, sex traffickers, gangsters, and terrorists. That is what Labour stands for. Okay. I'm missing a point. Jeremy Corbyn compared to Nigel Farage after vow to curb foreign workers. Okay. But you can make a comparison to Nigel Farage. But again, that's something that as an elected leader he has to deal with because the public said it wanted to leave. So let's be clear. This is the same goofball. Great news. Both of you are hope. Yes. Here's somebody with good sense. Top 10 crossovers. Yes. Well, interesting to hear something nice about the guy. Usually people only talk about what Semite he is. Mind you, he really is. No, he is not. Oh no, he's highly... Look at this. Glenn Greenwald adds a bit of sanity to this. After Jeremy Corbyn and AOC both posted admiring tweets about the telephone call conversation yesterday they had, AOC's Twitter feed was swamped by people chiding her for implicitly endorsing Corbyn's fictitious anti-Semitism. Dialogue is always good, but ideologically driven spears are not. Yes, Glenn Greenwald, as often he is correct. These are just smears. In some cases, it was politically advantageous to sides that was within the Israeli lobby to smear Corbyn because, let's be honest, the last person they want to take the prime ministership is somebody who cares about Palestinian rights. So, you know, if you have an occupation that goes kind of against your mojo. Trudy. What did you say, Trudy? What you got? JT, you're always saying that people are the product of their environment they were born in. Yes, I was racist and religious as a child and young woman, but information of thought freed me from that. No excuses. I disagree with that, Trudy. Kind of. Like, oh man, yes and no, Trudy. People are a product of their environment. And you do get a situation where over the course of people's lifetime, things impact them that change those people. They're shaped by the events that they engage in. So, fair enough. I don't know what events you engaged in where you were open-minded enough to kind of allow to let in a certain bit of light that had you to question or move in a particular direction. But I will point out that to some degree, how you turned out was indistinguishable from the things that you encountered on your way to your adulthood. Not everybody has those experiences, and not everybody is necessarily open, meaning the combination of the two things would need to be present for the person to expand themselves. I don't think that's absolute for everybody. I mean, for whatever factors that allowed you to kind of get a certain degree of space between who you were versus who you are now, that is a good thing. But I stand by that. I think people are product of their environments. Again, I've always added this kind of modicum of the individual. Like, there's an aspect of code that's you, but that aspect of code is soaking into society, meaning anything that you do is a product of that society in some way. Either you're pushing back against it or you're accepting it. But at the end of the day, you're still reacting to the things that are in your environment. That little bit of you was open to whatever you encountered that allowed you to be you. That's my case. That's my argument. Real journalism used to be on mainstream media as long as it was revealing our aggression. J. Scott, the pressure AOC is under is not fair. No, it's not fair. It's not fair, Jay. I agree with you on that. Here's the thing, though. There's always a lift, right? I mean, how do you have a conversation when this idea of rich and poor, if you can't bring up the fact that there needs to be a conversation about rich and poor? Somebody has to take the lift. Somebody has to go on the limb and say, look, this is what is true. This is what I affirm to be true. And other people say, hey, that person might be right. Fact of the matter is, it's kind of like asking a woman out for a date. You have to try to take the opportunity that you might be punched in the face. I don't mean punched in the face literally. I just mean that's how it feels when you get turned down and you're rejected and you're standing there with a tear kind of dropping out your eye as she walks away and you look down. I'm making the point that somebody has to stand out there alone to kind of make an argument before people start accruing around that particular point of view. The same thing was with Sanders. The space that Sanders was able to open up was because he opened his mouth and he said something about it. People were like, oh my God, he's right. What he was saying was indicative of the reality that they were living. Same thing with AOC. She was saying something that was just remarkably true that just nobody wanted to talk about. I agree with you that the pressure she's under is not necessarily fair. But she did something that was pretty fucking spectacular. She took down Crowley. And to take it down Crowley, all of this attention started to be focused on her. Be like, oh my God, she's attractive. It's during the Me Too movement. And not just attractive, she's a person of color. Not just a person of color, she calls herself a goddamn socialist. Like, if you're looking for things of distinguishing characteristics that identify you from the crowd, she hit it the trifecta. Or quadrifecta, whatever that is. Just saying. I don't necessarily think it's fair. I think it just is. But this is an opportunity in the same way that, yeah, it's not necessarily the fairest thing in the world. Not the fairest thing in the world. And I try not to criticize her for BS. Because I accept, you know, there's a certain degree of weight associated with where she is. She's 29 years old. It's like a 29-year-old beat a political dinosaur. And all of a sudden, all of the spotlight from all across the world is on her. And not just the spotlight is on her. She has to know what to say. A, not to lose her base. Then a lot of that is just her being her, if I'm being honest. Meaning her base is going to be there as long as she is just her. But that becomes difficult. You're in a political climate where you have people who are now part of your party. And those people who are part of your party have a certain degree of pressure that are going to be applied to you while you're in the political space, because let's be honest, you're in a political space. And if you want to get anything done, you have to have allies to get that stuff done. And so there's so much antagonism she can create, meaning this thing of keeping herself distinct while simultaneously working as part of the group. That's a fine line to draw. And that's a fine line to draw when you're 29 years old. I have no expectation of her doing that right every time. I would be hard-pressed for anybody to do that right every time. And then you get into this question of what does it mean to do it right every time, I guess, as opposed to what you're trying to accomplish. So, yeah, I agree with you on that, Jay. I agree with you on that. But this was nonsense. I just want to be very clear on that. The attacks that she's been getting on this are utter nonsense. Can you comment on Joe Rogan and Jack Dorsey interview? I haven't seen it. Jack Dorsey. I keep saying, man, be careful with Joe Rogan. Be careful with Joe Rogan. Not yet, Trina. I'm going to cover it today, though. I have it coming up next, if I'm not mistaken. Tulsi Gabbard's speech. I want to go over that. In fact, not just Tulsi Gabbard's speech. I also want to go over Tulsi Gabbard's speech. She's been extremely strong on the anti-war front. And goddamn, I love her for that. So there's that. And there's something else associated with Tulsi Gabbard. Oh, hit piece. NBC does a hit piece on Tulsi Gabbard saying that she's a Putin puppet. Glenn Greenwald goes through the hit piece that they put on Tulsi Gabbard and finds that the place that they're using in order to back this up is new knowledge. They're essentially the place that fabricated Russian attacks in the Alabama election for the Democrat. Fabulous. God, I love Glenn Greenwald. And Miran Williamson. So, two things with her. One is going to be brutally sexist. The other one is going to be extraordinarily I guess she's admirable or admiring for the brutally sexist one. Come on, there we go. I watched the speech that she gave in her announcement, her coming out saying she was going to run for president. Right off the bat, the power clothing is awesome. That's the first point. Second point, I like what she's saying, man. Like, it's quasi-political, but quasi not, if that makes sense. And I have no idea what that means in a political sense. Like, and for whatever reason, that's badass to me, and that's attractive to me. So it's this odd thing of attraction being mixed with loving the message, and maybe both of those things work in tandem. So the first point, this spiritual rejuvenation of America. I watched that speech with a certain amount of wow. Her calling for reparations and saying that this is kind of the crux of something that can never be mended unless it's dealt with in those terms. And that's a fascinating thing. I've thought that myself, but I've never thought that was politically achievable. Like what would have happened if at the end of all of everything, it says, look, here's your 40 acres and a mule. At the very least, yes, we exploited you brutally. Yes, we did really bad things, but we're trying to make amends. We're trying to own up to what we did, and we want to try to balance the scales, even though we know those scales cannot be balanced. The government of America apologizes. We are sorry what we've done to you and your race and your group. And the same thing for the Native Americans, but for African Americans, we're sorry. And this is us trying to make ends meet. What happens under that? Like, I'm fascinated by that thought. What takes place in America? How does America grow and change if at the end of the Civil War, for the end of everything that took place, that conversation was had? Not put under the rug, not pretended that it wasn't there. Because, look, let's be very honest. There are consequences to not doing that. 40% of Americans are only one missed paycheck away from poverty. And you get into the details of this, and, you know, a lot of these are African Americans. Like, a large share of this is African Americans. And then you get to the disparity between African Americans versus whites, which is mind-blowing when you look at it. I don't have the details in front of me. But that the space between those things is phenomenal. Even when you get to this thing of the number of people who are going to be insecure versus the number of people who are not, and the racial demographics associated with it, oh God, like, there was no demarcation point in American history. Like, there was no point where it stopped, where it says, all right, history is stopping here, and this section was cut out of it, and time just restart. God just said, bam, you're back. That never happened. Meaning, there's a continuity between everything that took place of an unbroken chain. And there are consequences to those unbroken chains. This is not, you know, people were bitching and moaning about affirmative action. Affirmative action was them trying to make up. That was a goal of them trying to kind of mend these kind of frayed edges of history of sorts. And people didn't even like that, because within a generation, people forgot of the fact that the affirmative action was there in order to try to make amends for what took place back then. Like, it's amazing of some of this stuff. You're talking about a brutally, brutally repressed aspect of the population going from slavery all the way up to Jim Crow, all the way up to like the 70s. I mean, for fuck's sake. What she's saying in a sane society is not insane. The right-wingers will have this conversation like, fuck that, I'm not doing that. But she has a point. And I'm talking about Marianne Williams. She has a point. I love the point. I thought the point was fascinating. I sat there thinking through her speech, how does this look in a political space? And let's be honest, the billions of dollars that she's saying wouldn't be enough. But still, the idea that she's even willing to have the conversation is mind-blowing. So kudos to her. Kudos to her. Trina be fine. I'll hold out for more money. 100 billion is low. 100 billion is low. It is low. Don't misunderstand me. That 100 billion figure is way too low. But she's saying it. Like the very fact that it's, I am blown away that I am listening to a candidate say those words out in the open. There needs to be reparations. A black candidate can never say it. White candidate, yes. White candidate, yes. I was amazed by that. Polls taken showing blacks are more racist than any other color because they can't get away from the paranoia they're always being targeted. I don't think they're more racist than everybody else. I don't think they're more racist, but I don't think blacks are any less susceptible to the shit that goes on in society than anybody else. It's not like we're fucking magical creatures. I mean, if you're soaking in a society that's a particular way, then those people come out a particular way, even from the standpoint of self. Like, who I am, to some degree, is determined by the society that I'm in. And even though there's somewhat of a bulwark, because if you're telling me that I'm something, but I know my mom is not that way, I know my so-and-so is not that way, I know so-and-so, but you can still get stuck with those ideas, soaking in your head from the society that you're in. You're not immune. I don't think we're immune. Alright, I'm going to end this because this video is gone like 26 minutes. Fuck. This video is supposed to be 10 minutes. Alright, Trudy, thank you. Pop reality. Does AOC endorsements hold weight in the primaries? That's an interesting question, right? I want to say yes, maybe. I mean, yes. I'm going to say yes. Coon man. That's so fucked up. I can't, like, I was blown away that they were calling that man Coon man. It was so bizarre. Isolation causes isolationism. Isolation causes tribalism. Tribalism leads to xenophobia and racism. There are a lot of openly racist black people, just like the other race. Yeah, we're not magical creatures. I mean, you can make an argument that says if something happens to an individual, is the individual racist if they're responding to legit things in their society? Meaning, if you were living in the 60s and you were in a repressive Alabama state, is it racist for you to hate whites? Well, fuck no. You're responding to your environment. Like, there's nothing innately, it would be odd for you to love the thing that's abusing you, right? Is that considered racism? I guess you could say in a certain way, but I guess it's an understandable racism based on environmental factors. You can probably make an argument for whites too. If you're growing up in this kind of white racist state, is it more likely that you're going to turn out to hate blacks as a virtue of the society itself? I guess that question goes both ways. If you were, there's going to be some people that rise above it. And there's going to be some people that finds it somewhat distasteful. But there's going to be a low denominator that picks up the attributes of society. So there's, I guess it gets into, from a technical definition, yes, but is there a difference in racism when people have a reason to be racist as opposed to people who don't? I know that's a bizarre fucking thing. Because someone be a racist and a good person depends on depends on who you are, right? Like, Andrew Jackson was supposed to be a great guy, missing a cat, that the guy was an Indian killer, or Native American killer. If you were white, you might not have cared that much about all the killing for Native Americans, but if you were Native American, you would have thought the guy was a fucking asshole. Same thing with our politics today. George W. Bush gets considered to be a decent person. When George W. Bush drops dead and ends up burning in hell, hopefully one exists, his belief in God and all this other stuff, all of these people are going to eulogize him as a great man, despite the fact that he got over 1 million people killed and we're in chaos to this day because of the things that took place. Was he racist? Who cares? Doesn't matter. You know what I mean? Like, in some of these cases, like, can a racist be a good person? A racist can be a good person to people who are not necessarily of the race that he hates. Yes. I'm pretty sure he can be very polite and pleasant also. But a good person thing, that's a different animal, man. Good person. I don't know. That's a tough one. I want to say no. I'm reflexively want to say no, but this is one of those things where it kind of depends on who you are. You need to be empowered to be racist. Pop reality, that's kind of what I'm getting at, right? I guess I'm kind of going in that direction saying, your point is you need a social structure. You need a structure in order to apply. If Bob is racist, Who gives a shit that Bob is racist? Bob can't do anything about the fact that he's racist. However, if you have a power structure that allows Bob to inflict his will on other people, then yeah, Bob is being racist because he has a societal structure that allows him to be that way. I understand your point. I understand your point. I've read that argument. A racist isn't always hateful. Yes, that's true. Yeah, I guess by definition, there's no on and off switch, right? It's a gradient. This is not digital. This is somewhat, it goes gradient. Well, maybe it is digital. It's just too much of a gradation for us to see it. All right, I want to end this here because this conversation is going to go into, it's already going into odd places. And it has, I don't think anything, well, no, I guess it does have something to do with it. Some blacks think blacks can't be racist. That's bogus. Yeah. I've heard people make that argument that blacks can't be racist. I don't know why they think that. It's like we're magical creatures that don't necessarily have those biases. All right, Clyde. Have fun, man. Enjoy your spaghetti. All right. What matters is stopping the violation of human rights. Josh Adamson. Yes. Yes. But I'm sure there's a disagreement in there somewhere. I feel it. I feel like there's a disagreement lurking in me saying yes to that. Yeah, I think there's something there that I'm missing. Yeah, human rights are important, but I don't think there's any kind of magical solution to human rights. Don't you have to some degree, deal with attitudes of individuals in order, that propagate that stuff? Because again, it's not magic. These things are not, people are brought up in a society that propagates certain ideas and belief systems. It's like, how do you put a knife in those belief systems and a proliferation of those belief systems without being heavy-handed in the process of doing so? I don't know. And is being heavy-handed the thing that you need to do? Kind of like in the civil rights movement where legislation was passed in order to kind of make this, codify this as a norm. The government considers this to be a norm. People consider this to be a norm. And it becomes a hegemonic norm. Meaning, from a standpoint of economics, no, you're not going to get your 40 acres and a mule. But man, if we're going to call somebody coon man and that photo comes out of him being in the Klan suit or being in blackface 30 years later, oh, we're going to get his ass. We're going to get his ass. But everything else is, the monetary aspect of it, not so much. All right, I'm ending this. I will see you guys in a few because I have another video after this. This is a long days of videos. In fact, this is going to go into the night because tomorrow I have a clinic visit. So I'll see you guys in a few. If you guys enjoy the content, please consider supporting the content through Patreon or PayPal. Thanks all.